On this episode of Voice Talks, we're looking back at season 2 of the show and looking ahead to what's next for voice tech and AI in 2022 and beyond, featuring
Andi Huels, Lenovo, Artificial Intelligence.
Diana Mingels, Capital One, Conversational AI.
Rich Stern, TuneIn.
Mike Bifulco, Google Assistant.
As always, I'm your host, Megan Grace. Let's talk voice. Welcome back to Voice Talks. I'm your host, Megan Grace. Thanks for joining us today. This is our December episode, which means it's the last show of the year. But don't worry, we have a few special items in store for you to mark the occasion. It's been an amazing year for us at Google and Voice Talks. Over our 9 episodes, we've heard from and interacted with some of the greatest minds in voice. Leaders from Samsung, Verizon, Walmart, Strava, and more have joined the show to share their insights on this explosive industry. We've really covered a lot of ground this last year. We heard how companies are building more inclusive voice solutions. We learned about the latest trends in user behaviors and what's to come from the Voice Consumer Index report out of Vixen Labs. We talked about UX design principles and how developers are building for today and tomorrow. And we dug into a few areas where voice has strong product market fit, like in the home and in the health and wellness space. We knew we had to end this year with a bang. So with that in mind, we'll hear an engaging panel discussion about the biggest advancements from the broadcast, fintech, and device sectors, and what the next 1 to 5 years look like for voice and conversational AI. But first, we've put together a special piece highlighting some of the best moments from Voice Talks in 2021. Let's take a look. Welcome back to Voice Talks. I'm your host, Megan Grace. Thanks for joining us today.
And so our mission is really simple: build conversational experiences that enable our customers to talk to Walmart anywhere or anytime so they can shop and get the things that they need.
And I think what we've seen overall is across voice and across the platform is that as we offer more services and more capabilities to customers, we see increased engagement with those services and with the platform.
We're actually starting to see designs where it's, here's the design for today, and then in the design, you'll actually have a conditional saying like, when this is possible, this is the way we should be architecting this. So, that way the developers know, where do we need to build a foundation so that we're not just building for today, but we're also leaving the door open for tomorrow.
The most significant piece of determining depression and anxiety is not what people say, but how they say it.
So if you have good consumer insights, it's kind of like digging for gold. You're looking for these little nuggets of information that are going to allow you to come up with better use cases and better creative ideas and better solutions that make that voice experience better.
We're going to see that a conversation designer's job will become more about finding content, defining content, and writing content in a way that is fit for conversational consumption, because something that is being written to be read is different than something that's being written to be said.
Consumers will ask a voice assistant whatever they feel like asking, whether it can do it or not. And you can use that to learn what kind of features consumers will value most.
We're very comfortable implementing voice technology because we know that as athletes, this concept of being hands-free and being able to sort of communicate with their devices in a seamless fashion is really important to the experience.
The fact that my people, my children, and others can simply ask that question, hey Google, what happened on this day of Black History? Allow me to say this, but that warms my soul.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Until next time. It's so special to see how far the industry and the show have come in just 12 months. And it's been such a pleasure joining the show and being part of this incredible community. I'd love to hear from you all on this too. What stood out to you from season 2? What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the chat. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the button below so you can re-watch your favorite clips from this past year. Okay, next up, we've got a short segment from Mike Bafulco, Developer Relations Engineer at Google. He's going to cover SSML features offered by the Google Actions Builder and share how developers can use them.
Conversational actions allow you to create a rich, multimodal experience for your app or service with Google Assistant. Creating a great conversational experience is always the goal, and Action Builder offers many helpful features to create a conversational action that can feel like a real conversation with Assistant. Hi there, I'm Mike from the Google Assistant Developer Relations team. Today I'm going to talk about SSML features for conversational actions, and how you can take advantage of some of the features within SSML to make your conversational apps that much smoother. So let's start with the basics. What is SSML? SSML stands for Speech Synthesis Markup Language. It allows us to specify how text is pronounced when using Assistant's text-to-speech features. SSML is an industry-wide standard that is governed by the World Wide Web Consortium, or W3C. SSML is an XML-based markup language, and will look pretty familiar if you've written XML or HTML or anything like that before. At its most basic, SSML allows you to supply text to a text-to-speech generator, producing a sound file speaking the contents of your text. Let's take a look at a quick example.
Once upon a time, in a little house in the woods.
Pretty cool, right? Without much effort, this sample pauses when it gets to the comma and even trails off a bit when it gets to the ellipsis at the end of the sentence. If you've built a conversational action before, you may have bumped into SSML once or twice. There's many additional features specified in SSML which can help you add depth and character to speech voiced by the assistant.
Once upon a time, in a little house in the woods, there was a little family making their dinner.
We've recently added support for a couple new SSML features to Assistant. Let's take a look at a few of those features. First up, the phoneme tag. This allows you to customize the pronunciation of specific words. This can be useful when you want the assistant to pronounce a certain word just so, or if your app is used by people in different regions where the same word can have a markedly different pronunciation. To do this, you'll wrap the word whose pronunciation you want to specify in the phoneme tag, and supply two parameters to the tag, alphabet and ph. The alphabet parameter is used to specify the phonetic alphabet you want to use to declare your pronunciation. You've got two options here, IPA for the International Phonetic Alphabet and XSAMPA, which is the Extended Speech Assessment Methods Phonetic Alphabet. These are both industry standards which are used to describe phonetics. One caveat here. If you're using text-to-speech for the Chinese language, the options for alphabet are pinyin and jutping. There are more details on this in the docs if you're interested. The other parameter to supply is ph, which is where you supply the phonetic spelling of the word that's being processed. For more information on what's available here, check out our docs on supported phonemes and levels of stress. So let's take a look at a classic case where you might want to use the tag. You may have heard this old gem before.
You say tomato, and I say tomato.
Actually, that's not right at all. But let's not call the whole thing off. With a little bit of phoneme magic, it'll sound just like this.
You say tomato, and I say tomato.
Perfect. Now the assistant can say it the way your audience expects, so you can go your way and I'll go mine. Up next, the duration tag. To tell the interpreter to read something as a duration of time, wrap the time measurement in a say as tag. You'll supply a parameter called interpret as with duration and a format string to tell the interpreter how to read the number.
Shelley finished the half marathon in 2 hours and 23 minutes.
Now, when your SSML is interpreted, the text-to-speech engine will treat it as a duration rather than an ordinal number. Until recently, Assistant's SSML engine would only generate speech in a single voice per call. With the recent addition of support for the voice tag, you can generate audio in multiple voices and multiple languages in one SSML file. Let's check that out.
Good morning, friend.
Good morning, friend. Buenos días, amiga.
There's many options which you can use here for voice and language. Jump into the docs for more on the specifics. Similarly, we've added support for the lang tag, which allows you to use the same voice in a different language for a subset of your SSML text. Let's take a look at how you might use the lang tag.
All right, here's some places with great croque madame in Boston.
Great. So those are some of the great new features which are supported in conversational actions for Google Assistant. For more information, head on over to the docs. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, or if you want to see what everyone else is building, join us on Reddit at r/Google Assistant Dev or follow @ActionsOnGoogle on Twitter. Hope to see you there.
Thanks, Mike. All right, now it's time for our special panel discussion. In order to delve deeper into the key advancements of voice tech and conversational AI, we've brought together a few of the best minds in the industry. Andi Huels of Lenovo, Rich Stern of TuneIn, and Diana Mingels of Capital One. They will not only shed light on how their respective sectors are progressing, they'll also share predictions for voice more broadly and offer some valuable advice to leaders and developers navigating voice and AI implementation right now. Without further ado, let's welcome our panel.
Hey everyone, this is Pete Erickson. I'm the CEO and founder of Modev, and I'm the executive producer here at Voice Talks. And we are here for our final episode of the year. As a quick reminder, Voice Talks started at the beginning of the pandemic out of sheer need to stay connected with one another, and the show has taken on a life of its own. We've been able to meet people from around the world, from across so many interesting companies, and our final episode this year is no different. We have the CEO of TuneIn, Rich Stern. We have the head of AI North America from Lenovo, Andi Huels. And we have the senior manager for conversational AI at Capital One and who works on Eno, Diana Mingels. I'm going to take a quick moment here and let our panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Andi Huels with Lenovo. Andi, tell us about your role at Lenovo.
Thank you so much for having me on your final show of the year, Pete. I'm excited to be a part of this community. My role at Lenovo is not just head of AI, but really chief AI evangelist. So I have a unique opportunity to inspire senior executives on how they can leverage artificial intelligence to increase operational efficiency, make smarter decisions, and enhance customer experience. So really enjoying this new role that I'm in.
And thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Rich, what's happening at TuneIn?
Oh, well, also, thanks for having me, Pete, and so glad to be here with your other guests today. 2020 and 2021 were really transformative years for TuneIn. Especially during the height of the pandemic, many of our customers turned to connected devices in their home to listen and connect to the content that's on our platform. And 2021 was a year where we weren't really sure whether customers would go back to their habits pre-pandemic or whether some of the new habits that they had picked up around listening in the connected home would continue on. They did. And so we've seen great growth on those devices. We see an appetite from our customers for more interactive experiences that leverage content as well as voice AI. So this is an area that we're really eager to explore and something that we think is going to drive a lot of innovation over the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, thanks again for being here. Diana, you work on one of the leading AI bots in fintech called Eno. Tell us more about your role at Capital One.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I love Eno so much, not just because of its technical advanced capabilities, but also because its personality and character behind it. I'm leading natural language generation and natural language understanding teams at Capital One, where we build intelligent capabilities that power our intelligent assistant Eno. I've been in this role for more than 4 years now. We started when Eno was just a baby and couldn't do much, but now we have a lot of intelligent experiences and exciting customer interactions with our intelligent assistant. So overall, I have more than 14 years of experience in conversational AI and voice-related technologies. I also worked for Nuance Communications that was, and I believe still is, a pioneer and a leader in voice tech. So I'm very excited to share my experience and expertise with everyone who I get a chance to talk to about voice tech. And I'm always very happy to participate in any events that bring together people passionate about voice technology to share the knowledge and, take it back to Capital One and help influence the strategy for us.
I think what was nice about today, what is nice about today's panel is we are really coming from three major angles: fintech and finance and banking, media, entertainment and broadcast, and then devices with Lenovo. And, when we say devices, we can mean everything from speakers to drive-thrus, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I would love to hear from the panel, what are some of your major takeaways from 2021 with regards to, how the industry transformed, or anything that you noticed that happened this year?
Well, I'd say one of the biggest key takeaways is that the expectation level has dramatically increased. I mean, we're all on, Zoom and video calls. And so we expect the sound to be absolutely perfect. And the same when we talk to chatbots, we expect them to be very audible and crisp and clear. And those expectations have significantly increased. In my world, which is the infrastructure piece of enabling voice AI, what we've seen is a dramatic change where everything is going to the edge. 75% of the world's data is expected to be at the edge by 2024, and it's grown 4 times larger than the cloud. So that's where I've seen a lot of the changes. And in terms of just the pandemic itself, I've come to the realization that I do not like to be alone, and I really miss working with my Lenovo colleagues. I've only met 4 since I started with the company 6 months ago. So really looking forward to being closer to my team.
I hear you on the colleagues. I got to see some people today when we were setting up for Voice Summit for the first time. It was really great. Rich, would love to know what are the big takeaways for 2021?
Well, as I mentioned, I think the adoption of endpoints where customers can leverage this technology, interact with content and services, it's continued to proliferate. And I think over the course of the pandemic has become indispensable in a lot of our customers' lives. But I'll speak to another macro trend, which I think is not directly related to technology. It's really to human beings that I think is really important, which is, we're seeing the mass, resignation across the country. And, many of our colleagues, our friends, people in all different industries, especially as it relates to customer service, don't want to take on menial tasks the way that maybe they once did. And those jobs are less important to them. And I think it's an opportunity for technology to step up and say, yeah, let's use human beings in more appropriate, more productive, more engaging ways. And let's let some of the technologies that we're talking about here step up and fill the gap. And I think that's an exciting time because I think it's the first time as an industry, we've sort of looked at this and said, well, wait a minute, we're not displacing workers. We're not replacing human beings. We're actually filling a void that's starting to be created by opportunities where human beings don't want to do these jobs, maybe in the same way that they did before. And that's a wonderful way to lean into the technology. And that wasn't true last year.
I think you said that well. I think that leveraging technology to raise up the things that make us uniquely human is fantastic. Diana, you have been on both sides of the pond in Europe and the US. What have you noticed in the industry this year?
Yeah, despite the pandemic that, of course, very unfortunate for all of us, I see a tremendous growth in conversational AI all over the globe. According to Gartner, there are approximately 2,000 natural language technology providers today, with a very large number of those offering conversational AI services. And we can see there are some incumbents like LivePerson or 24/7 that existed for a very long time, and they kind of modernizing and adjusting their strategies to meet the modern demand. But we also see a huge amount of startups, and that is very exciting for me because they compete with one another. They're trying to differentiate themselves. They're coming up with creative ways of standing out. They're addressing different industries. And we also see a lot of mergers and acquisitions happening today. And I think all of this is going to produce these best winners, that really strong AI technology, really user-friendly, easy to adopt. And it's super, super exciting for me as a technologist myself. Also, on the other side, we have tremendous progress in deep neural network algorithms. There is a never-ending competition of who has the larger model, who is the smartest. The models keep growing. People keep leveraging them for new innovative applications. In terms of speech recognition itself, we can now understand different accents, multiple speakers at the same time, and even children's speech that was extremely difficult for a very, very long time, as well as emotion and any additional cues that people give you besides just the verbiage itself and the language that they use. So a lot of movement, a lot of excitement, a lot of growth, and I'm super excited to see what happens in the next 5 years.
Well, thank you so much, each of you. I think that one of the One of the themes that I heard there was the ecosystem and how the ecosystem is evolving. And we're certainly seeing that as well. Andi, I think in your role, you really are an ecosystem, stoker. You bring the ecosystem together to make these things possible. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Yes. I have the unique role of being able to work with retail, QSR, which stands for quick serve restaurant, and manufacturing customers to bring the AI ecosystem together. And what I mean by an ecosystem, it's a technology ecosystem. So it's all of the players that are involved in enabling voice AI. So for example, you have the ISV, which stands for independent software vendor. You have the GPU manufacturer, which is someone like NVIDIA. You have a CPU manufacturer for computing power. So that's someone like Intel. And you also have sometimes a system integrator. And then you have someone like myself that does edge servers. And so what we optimally want to do is work together to optimize the platform, the software platform on the edge server. So it has the right computing power and memory and performs optimally in that setting.
I love that. Friends helping the customers win. If we could all be so lucky to have that kind of environment. So good for you for creating that kind of atmosphere. Rich, as a broadcaster, I know that you've got so many different kinds of partners. You have content partners and technology partners, and then your own teams to manage. But how important is the ecosystem to you as a leader, as a CEO of one of the leading companies in this space?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's incredibly important because, if you think about it, I mean, TuneIn really isn't a broadcaster. I mean, we're a platform, and we're connected to, over 200 different consumer electronics devices. We're connected to major auto manufacturers, and, we're connected to over 100,000 broadcasters from around the world who want to have their content made available and to reach audience anywhere a customer might want to listen. And being able to go ahead and deliver that experience and deliver it on a wide topology of different devices and different ways that help us connect meaningfully to customers, it would be an impossible task without the ecosystem that Andi was describing. And for us, we get to take some of the glory because at the end of the day, we're touching the end customer, and they're delighted that they get to ask for any radio station that they would want in the world, or any podcast that they would want to listen to, or interact with a particularly innovative or funny advertisement that they hear through one of our streams. But fundamentally, it's not TuneIn. It's this whole ecosystem of partners getting to work together, and it's the efficiencies that we've been able to achieve over the last several years, and ultimately the vision of many of our partners on where they believe this technology can go.
Yeah, I think as a consumer and as somebody that's in this industry, I'm certainly seeing the number of places now that I use my voice. Certainly watching TV is one of them too. It's just crazy how much now we're controlling the television with our voice in our house. But as consumers get more used to the idea, things like using our, chatting with a voice assistant when we go into a quick service restaurant or a drive-through are just going to not only be possible, but actually maybe be expected.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Pete, because really what both restaurants and customers are looking for is less transactional friction and a better customer experience. So in a recent deployment at one of the world's largest QSRs, we were able to enable natural language processing, voice to text in the drive-thru. And the way this works is when you place your order, you will see the text on the screen, no matter what language you're speaking. And you can verify your order yourself and add more items or take them off. And, some people may say, well, that, eliminates the job of the drive-thru attendant. But honestly, who grows up and says, I want to be a drive-thru attendant, right? It's not the most meaningful work and most interesting. So this way we're taking out the parts that are a little less exciting to be a drive-thru attendant. And they really just need to verify that the order is correct and send it to the POS system. So again, the most important part is that you reduce the transactional friction for both the customer and the attendant and enhance that overall experience going through the drive-thru.
So Diana, as we look into the future, as a leader, what are some of your priorities from a strategic standpoint? Are you thinking about the team, the technology, what's top of mind for you as you start to think about 2022?
Yeah. So voice AI technology will become increasingly better and faster with advances and accessibility of bigger computing power in the future. And we've seen a tremendous progress already in the last couple of years. And I believe in the future it won't be just about the quality, but more so about privacy and security of those solutions. And as a result, we will see much more secure solutions emerge. Another important point for the future is the barrier to adoption of voice technology. It's still pretty high. You do need to be a kind of a tech-savvy individual to set up your smart home system and connect all the smart devices to your network. And in the future, this process will become much simpler, which will drive adoption again and usage of voice tech for much more use cases than simple weather lookup, timer, or music. And also, while voice is awesome, not everyone can or will want to use it. We shouldn't forget about that. We don't want to impose voice solutions without giving a choice for an alternative, as this can not only result in a negative experience, but hold back the progress we want to make. Because when there is no alternative, there is a risk of alienating a certain subset of users. In some cases where there is no alternative, it can also create an emergency situation for people when they, cannot use their voice and cannot accomplish some kind of a very important task. In case of people who have language or speech impairments, for example, this is critical. Or even for people who are simply unable or unwilling to use their voice, they always should be able to operate any voice-enabled device, website, or software in an alternative way. And that alternative way is also a fallback solution in case something goes wrong for those people who do like to use voice. To put it in simpler words, when voice enabling in your elevator, do not take out the buttons and the touch screens right away. Just leave people a choice to decide when they are ready to use their voice and how they want to interact with the essential tools and services around them. But having said all that, there is no doubt in my mind that voice AI will become the dominant player over all interactive technologies, and the process of getting there has already started.
Well said, well said. And I think you bring up the accessibility thing, which is one of the great promises of voice technology, and we've certainly seen a lot of that at the conference over the first few years, and it's a great promise for the technology. So, Rich, I would love to hear what are some of your bold predictions with regards to where this is going, and anywhere from the next 1 to 5 years. What are we going to see come out of the voice tech and conversational AI landscape?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think just building on some of what Diana had to say, with those, foundational enablers that come in, like take just identity, for instance, knowing who's speaking, having understanding of their age, being able to understand their accents, the language detection improving. What we can do as a service provider changes tremendously. Like we have new skills. And when you think about it, many of the voice experiences that are happening today are one size fits all. That's going to change. It's going to be deeply personalized, the same way that your web experiences are personalized to you. You'll start to see that in the voice space over the next few years. I think from an advertising standpoint, that same personalization allows for the kinds of interactivity that we see on the web and that we see in mobile applications today. If you want to learn more about that new Lexus, you won't just hear an audio ad. You'll be able to have a conversation about it. If you want to learn more about that trip to Disney World, you can do it right in context. And I think that's a much better experience for consumers, and it's a better experience for marketers. Finally, content analytics, I think, is going to change dramatically as well. Our ability to not only understand live broadcast streams, but then connect that to our recommendation engines, connect it to other forms of personalization that help engage a much larger audience in the content that's most relevant to them. That's what I see on the horizon. One other thing that I'll say is that, consumers don't typically change their habits for as good. They typically change their habits for much, much better. And I think, if we look at the life cycle of voice technologies, we've been sort of in the as good with minor benefits. We're about to, I think, take a step forward into the much better. in terms of how customers will be able to interact with services and content just across the entire landscape. And I think that's also going to drive adoption and drive engagement at levels we just haven't seen before.
Yes, thank you so much, Rich. I think context, interactivity are some of the exciting things that are going to be happening for consumers out there. I can attest, again, I'll use my children as an example. They like to play video games, but they get ads for video games and they're actually playing the game in the ad. And I think that's what's going to happen with voice-enabled advertising.
I think the other thing is, Pete, is that, because I have kids too, we've got now a generation of young people that have grown up and never knew a world before voice assistants or voice interactivity. And, even if we look at different models of computing that we've all lived through, from mainframe to personal computer to mobile computing, voice and cloud computing is now the norm for an entire generation, that they're going to carry that forward and carry those preferences forward. And that's a real powerful accelerant to everything we're talking about in the industry as well. They never knew a time when these things didn't exist.
Excited to see the things that they're going to invent. And I think it's already starting to happen. Andi, you're part of even creating the future right now as it relates to some of the industries that you serve, but would love to know your bold predictions with, where things are going. What is it going to be like in 4 or 5 years?
Well, great question. Technology is moving so quickly. Artificial intelligence is absolutely exploding. And if I say to myself, why is this? I think it's really because disruptive players have one thing in common, and that's a need for speed. So AI, specifically voice AI, enables that increase in speed and reduces transactional friction. But what I love to tell my customers, especially in retail and QSR, is that AI is easy. A lot of people think, oh my goodness, that's something on my future product roadmap. I'm gonna have to get my team on that AI thing. But really, it's not difficult at all if you work with the technology ecosystem and you have a strong partner that brings those folks together for you. It also pays for itself extremely quickly. I mean, my customers are absolutely delighted and the demand is overwhelming. I wish there were more Andis at Lenovo to handle the calls that I get. But last of all, I would love to encourage all of you to start with the customer and work backwards. Do they have a need for speed? Do they want to reduce transactional friction? Do they, want to address their labor turnover issues? If you start with the customer and work backwards and really listen to them, when I was working with the largest QSR globally, one of their issues was, those servers that are going to go in the manager's office at that small retail restaurant, they make a lot of noise and they're warm. So how can we reduce that? And so I really, worked closely with them in terms of what kind of space they have, what kind of acoustics, what temperature, what are their latency issues, security, what kind of ruggedization do they need on those devices? So if you are an ISV, don't assume just because your software is amazing and does all these cool things that it's just going to work fine in the customer setting. Definitely pull in, the server, the GPU, the CPU folks, and the system integrator to make sure that your platform is optimized.
I think one of the things I heard here, and thank you so much, Andi, is that technology is changing our future for the better. Whether we are a restaurant, whether we're doing our banking, or whether we're trying to listen to our favorite show. Exciting times ahead. One thing we do know is going to happen is the voice tech and conversational AI industry is going to keep us all connected and moving together and improving the technologies that we use and ultimately improving our work and home lives. So thank you all so much again for being on Voice Talks today, and we hope you have a warm and safe holiday.
Thank you, Andi, Diana, and Rich, for such an interesting discussion. I'm always energized to hear how voice technology is spanning industries. This discussion was a perfect example of how truly any industry can implement a voice strategy to create better, frictionless experiences for their users. And with that, that's our December episode, and that's a wrap for Season 2 of Voice Talks. We want to wish you a wonderful holiday season and Happy New Year. Thank you for being part of this show and making our community so special. We'll be back for Season 3, but in the meantime, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at VoiceTalksAI. And don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube to ensure you don't miss a single update. Until next time.